Hey everyone, it's Anna from The Last Stitch. One of the things I'm really passionate about is making my own leggings. In fact, I think it must have been over 5 years ago as I last went into a store and bought a pair of leggings, because to me, I find that both getting the fit right, being able to use really fun fabrics, being creative with all the details, that to me is just much more rewarding than having to rely on store-bought leggings, which to me, at least fit-wise, has always been a bit of a disappointment. But even though leggings is a fairly straightforward garment to make, there are actually a few things that will make a massive difference. And in today's video, I will share my top tips for sewing really awesome leggings that will absolutely look very, very professional. So let's start with tip number 1. When you're sewing leggings, it's crucial that you pick the right stretch stitch. If you have a sewing machine, I have 2 suggestions for you. The first one is that you sew 2 rows of zigzag stitches, one narrow and one wide. This will create a really durable seam that also has great stretch. Another option is to use a stretch overlock stitch, which is something that most modern sewing machines will have. Just check your manual to make sure that you pick the right one. For sewed stitches, I recommend using either a 3-thread overlock stitch, which is durable and has amazing stretch properties. Or you can also use the 4-thread overlock, which has slightly less stretch than the 3-thread, but is still an excellent choice for sewing leggings. Before you start sewing the leggings, do test your stitch by stretching it in both directions to make sure it's stretched enough and it doesn't break. I prefer using clips rather than pins when I'm sewing leggings, because clips, they don't damage or distort the fabric, and they're also really easy to remove. You just remove them while you're sewing, and the clips are especially good if you're using a serger, since you have to be very careful with the pins if they are too close to the serger knives. And by the way, clips are also excellent for attaching the elastic to the waistband, so you just clip them onto the seam allowance and it will be a breeze to sew. And you can even use the clips to keep the hem in place, especially if you use the smaller clips. If you're curious about all these clips, do check the description section where I have more info on where to get these wonderful clips. When making leggings, you do want to remove bulk at any cost, so make it a habit to fold the seam allowance in opposite direction where they meet. For instance, fold the front crotch seam in one direction and the back crotch in the opposite direction before you start sewing. To make sure that the crotch seams are aligned and properly folded, stop and check before you sew over them, because they have a tendency of flipping if you're not too careful. You can also use this principle when you're hemming. This will remove a bulk, so clip a little snippet in the seam allowance, fold the seams in opposite direction, and then you fold up the hem. This will remove bulk and also prevent skip stitches, which is a bit of an annoyance when you're hemming your leggings. I recommend that you use stretchy power net or mesh to stabilize the waistband for a great fit and shape. You just underline the inner waistband facing with the mesh, just place it on the inner pieces, and then you pin or use clips to keep it in place. After that, you sew together the side seams, which also secures the mesh underlining. And you finish it off by sewing together the outer and the inner waistband, just like you would with a normal waistband. And this creates a really professional looking, well-fitting waistband, so I highly recommend that you invest in power mesh or net if you are sewing waistbands on leggings. For the leggings waistband, you want to avoid heavy elastic. Instead, opt for a thin knitted elastic or a clear elastic, and that is to remove bulk and make the elastic invisible from the outside. You place the elastic on the seam allowance and then you line it up along the inner seam, and the elastic should extend outside the edge of the seam allowance. Also, place the elastic on the outer waistband. Again, use clips to keep the elastic in place. Then you finish it off by attaching the elastic using a medium zigzag stitch on your regular sewing machine. If you do have problems with skip stitches, just switch to a larger ballpoint needle and that will solve the problems. I am even so passionate about sewing leggings that I've even created my own sewing pattern, the Aila leggings. And if you want to learn more about that pattern, of course, more information will be down in the description box. And also on my website, thelaststitch.com, I have so many resources when it comes to activewear, both a big list of fabric vendors, pattern companies, lots and lots of tutorials, so I highly recommend check that out as well if you want to learn even more about sewing leggings and making your own activewear. Anyways, thank you so much for watching this video. Please subscribe for weekly sewing videos. Stay safe, and I'll see you next time.